Today on the How Did You podcast, we're joined by Mark Bryceland, a former competitive Call of Duty player who's now gone from strategic coach of Untitled Chapter to head coach. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm great, man. How about yourself?
I'm not too bad, thank you. You've had lots of experiences, but mainly we've all seen you grow up within the Call of Duty scene. But let's dive into what we haven't seen. What did you want to be when you were younger?
That's a very good question. I think that honestly, I'd say that I didn't really truly know what I wanted to do, definitively. When I was younger, I was very creative and loved art and design and all those sort of things. So I'd say probably down that sort of route. But honestly, I'd say that that's kind of what led me into Call of Duty, is that I didn't really know what I wanted to do, to be honest with you.
You started your journey on Team Dignitas, and you'd had lots of different areas that you'd played within beforehand. How did you get onto Team Dignitas? Was there a friend? Was it business related, or is it just out of the blue?
Yeah, honestly, it was just a great opportunity that I was given, sort of early on in my Call of Duty career, where I was doing fairly well online in different matches and whatnot, and it was one of those things where I started to get noticed by just doing well in online scrims and whatnot, and then got that opportunity through Dignitas. I made some great relationships as well, I'd say, that sort of created those opportunities. Was really good friends with the likes of Riddles, who was on the team when I first joined, and I'd say that he was a big sort of proponent in me getting the opportunity to be in the roster. I think he was the one that really pushed for me to get an opportunity.
Definitely. You've also had lots of experiences throughout your teams. You've had TCM, Millennium, Team Infused, Epsilon, Splice, loads of different ones. But then now you've joined Toronto Ultra, who is owned by the Splice Group. How did that come around? Because obviously you retired around 2018 time. How was your hat thrown into the ring?
So I made the decision in 2018 to stop competing after I didn't qualify for season 2 of the CWL at the time. I think I was one match off qualifying for the league on both stage 1 and stage 2 that year. Like, if I won one more series, I would have qualified. So it was a very, very close margins. And I think, honestly, if I had qualified on one of those 2 seasons, I probably would have continued competing until after that. But at that point, when I didn't qualify, I didn't foresee myself getting any better opportunities. And I didn't foresee the team that I was part of succeeding. So I made the decision to sort of call it a day with the opportunity from the Splice guys. I've obviously competed against those guys: Josh, Madcat, Jordan, Bance. And again, like I said, I competed with and against a lot of those guys throughout my career. So they respected my opinion within the Call of Duty sort of world, and it just made sense, really. They were looking for a coach at the time to sort of take their game to the next level. I'd worked with them a little previously, kind of assist them a little bit here or there. Like, obviously I was competing against them, so it wasn't really like I could go in depth with them. But whenever sort of advice came, if I was still no longer in the event, or just being there to support, I was always kind of around. So it was just an easy transition, really.
You have been on quite a few teams for a lot of European organisations. If you had to name your kind of favourite team or dream team from the Europe scene, who would it be? Maybe it's teams or players that have moved to North America or even Canada, to kind of form part of the CDL. Who would it be?
I'd say, personally, I'd say I had 2 teams that are throughout my time competing as a player that I really enjoyed being a part of, and that would be my Infused team with Zero, PT, and Urban, and my TCM team with Gunchi, PT, and Moose. I'd say those were my 2 favourites. And then actually a very honourable mention as well to my very first TCM team in Black Ops 2, just for giving me the opportunity to sort of compete at an international event. My very first event in a pro team was just incredible, and I'd say that was probably one of the sort of most fun events. But I'd say after that it kind of went a bit downhill, but I really enjoyed those 3 teams, and for different reasons. I'd say my Infused team was probably the closest I'd been to any 3 players. Trey, I'd say Trey especially, Trey Zero, we had a sort of good relationship right now, and with not a sort of good relationship, a good relationship right now. And he's always been a big supporter of me, and even when we're competing against each other and whatnot, he's always sending me messages of support and whatnot. And when it was my birthday recently, he was one of the first people to send me a video message saying happy birthday and whatnot. So he's just always been a really positive guy, and I've always enjoyed and had fun memories teaming with him.
Let's kind of flip it onto what you do now. If you had to choose a retired player, or maybe a player that's not retired but is more content creator path, to become a head coach or coach with you, would it be the likes of Madcat, Swanee, anybody like that?
Yeah, I'd say Swanee jumps out straight away, because just the way he carries himself, he's like the ideal. I'd say he'd honestly be an ideal coach for a lot of franchises. You know, he's the consummate professional, and I think that's important as a coach, that you carry yourself to a very high standard, and he definitely does that. He commands respect from his teammates. So I think those are like two of the key things, and that would take him far in Call of Duty. And then, not just to mention his knowledge and his obsession with like improvement, and I'd say he would honestly be the perfect coach in my eyes. So I would love to see Swanee. Like you mentioned it straight away, you hit the nail on the head. I think Swanee, for me, out of anyone I can think of, across the board, EU, NA, is the number one for me.
You've also played a lot of games with family members. If you had to choose any non-Call of Duty game that's your favourite, would it be a FIFA, or would it be the fact that you like beating your dad and little sister at Mario Kart?
That's a hard one. I think probably my funnest times were just playing my dad and stuff on FIFA. I'd say that was probably the best at the time, where we're a bit more even. If I played him now, it just wouldn't even be fun. It wouldn't even be fun. But when you're a kid, it's obviously a lot closer, and you're taking some beatings, getting some wins. It's a lot more enjoyable. But yeah, now it would be a very fun game. I'm just too competitive now with anything I play, in terms of games, that it's just completely different to when I was younger. I just want to win in everything that I'm playing, against friends, against whoever.
Has there ever been a kind of FIFA tournament or FIFA match at a, say, backstage of a Call of Duty event that you've just remembered and gone, oh, you've got me there?
Yeah, I can think of actually a couple of funny ones. I'd say the funniest story, on my 18th birthday, I was at an event. So it was on my 18th birthday. So you can imagine, there was some drinks. There was some drinks going on. And I'd say that match that I had against, who was it? Shawsey from TCM. He was one of the FIFA pro players at the time. I played against him, and I lost about 10-0. I'd say that was probably one that sticks out to me. And then apart from that, I played Moose quite a few times. He was pretty rubbish to start with, but then he started grinding FIFA, and he's pretty good at FIFA now, so he'd probably smoke me, to be honest.
Definitely. But if we were to focus on Call of Duty, because obviously that's where your path currently leads you down, what would your favourite Call of Duty be?
I think the most perfect Call of Duty ever is, and I've said this a lot of times, but Black Ops 2 is the perfect competitive Call of Duty. It was fun for public. They obviously had zombies, like they had the first ranked play, albeit that I'd say that definitely could have been better at the time, because Masters, I would be bloody playing and getting like hunter killer drones and stuff like that. But apart from that, I'd say that Black Ops 2 is probably my favourite, and then close second would be Call of Duty World at War. Personally, I think it's a very underrated COD. And I'll always back Call of Duty World at War, because that was the game that really got me in love with competing in Call of Duty at an early age, playing game battles matches and whatnot. So I'd say that was a key one for me being where I am today.
You mention all of these games that are key for you, but to start your game battles journey, you played with school friends. How fun would it be just to run maybe a series with those friends once again?
To be fair, over the years we have tried at different points to like play a few GBs. To be honest, it doesn't go very well. Most of them play a lot of PC games now, so when it comes to controller, they're not as they're not quite there, I'd say. But honestly, a lot of my friends used to be a lot better than me when I was growing up, and if it wasn't for them, like, sort of going different directions or falling out of love with the game, I'm sure they would have been top players alongside me at the time. To be honest, because a lot of them were much better than me. It just came down to, I guess, me committing to it and them sort of stepping away from it.
If you had to commit to another game that you could coach in, what would it be and why? Would it be Halo that's just come out? Would it be Valorant? What would it be?
I think Halo would be the kind of one that would be obvious to say. Although, like, because obviously it's a first-person shooter and it's used with controller, and there's a lot of similarities. There's players that have jumped between both Call of Duty and Halo. Although I do think it would be a lot different. Obviously, the objective game modes we're playing are very similar to things that, and some of the sort of fundamental ways you play those game modes are very similar across the games as well. So I'd say, honestly, Halo would probably make the most sense. But I think from like a kind of interest standpoint, I'd say CS:GO, just because I love the idea of the strategy element and like that side of things, and going like super in depth into that side of the game, rather than the sort of, fast paced CTF. Sort of, all those different game modes that they play that are very similar to ours, King of the Hill, like, etc. It's all very similar. Obviously played a little differently, but there's a lot of similarities there between us and Halo. Counter-Strike for me would be the most interesting.
You speak about other areas that gain your interest, but I'm going to ask, is the third game mode Control, or is it something completely different?
I think it's Control, as far as I'm aware. If it's been announced, I think it's been announced. If it's not, then I honestly don't know. I think it's Control. Like, to be honest, I can't confirm. I could be saying something here that's just completely incorrect. It could already be announced. Honestly, I should probably know if it's been announced, but who knows? Yeah, I don't know.
If it's not, if it's not Control, what would you choose?
Personally, if I was remote rollout, guaranteed out, and CTF was coming in, I'd say, or not CTF was coming in. If another game mode was coming in, I would pick CTF. That's what I'm trying to say. If I had to choose, I would pick CTF as the third game mode. There's your answer.
Let's go back to, obviously, the European, UK, Glasgow area. What is your personal opinion on the UK only having maybe the London Royal Ravens as a kind of franchise? Because we've noticed that we've had in the Copper Box Arena with the famous Tommy moment with speaking to the crowd with Jess Brohard. Do you think that there should be more events in the UK because of how successful they have been?
Yeah, honestly, I think, to be honest, it would be great if there was more events in the UK. I think it's widely accepted that UK is like the best crowd at this point. Amongst all the NA pros, if you talk to them, they would all agree they love playing at London and all that stuff. So I'd say that everyone would want a UK event. I think the only reason there's not been is probably due to COVID over the last couple of years, to be honest. Like, you probably would have seen another London event. In fact, I think there was like one scheduled potentially. But yeah, so like obviously there's a lot of desire for people to get back there, and I think once COVID is 100%, locked away, which who knows if that will ever be the case, but once it's basically more feasible, I'd say that's when they'll more likely have another event there. Just with all the teams being based in North America right now, it's just kind of hard.
If you had to pick 2 Toronto Ultra players to go in Champions Hill and win it against any CDL team, who would it be, and who do you reckon they'd be facing in the final?
Honestly, I've not. Champions Hill is just pretty much, just gunfights. So I'd say you want some fast aggression. So you've kind of got to look at our team as a whole. You'd say Insight's probably the slowest paced player. Out of the SMGs, you'd say that that Bance is like the kind of more methodical, smarter player. So I'm scrapping all the methodology, scrapping all the strategy. We're just going pure gunning, and we're going Cammy and Kleenex as the answer.
Well, let's talk about the scrappiness, and let's talk about how they made their way into Toronto Ultra. Was it part of that singularity squad at CWL Champs that kind of grabbed your attention for, say, Kleenex or Insight? Because you've made decisions recently to pick up Hixie as a substitute. How did you get these kind of players under the Toronto Ultra banner?
Well, going into the first season, we signed 10 players, and obviously Kleenex and Cammy were part of that. Based a lot on their performances at the Call of Duty Championships, of course. Like, that was a big factor. I think if an NA player, like, this is, I've said this for years, but I think if an NA player had placed top 6 at his first champs, like Cammy did, he would have instantly been picked up into a starting lineup of another franchise. And I think we just basically got a freebie there. He just placed top 6. He was playing incredibly at champs. And like I said, he was very well spoken about amongst the European scene. Obviously, I'd say our scouting of the players has improved over the years, but at that point it was more so, watching their VODs, talking a little bit with sort of other people who had been involved with those players, and getting to know them. Like, I'd spoke a lot about Cammy to Rated, who spoke very highly of him, and Joe as well. So those players just really vouched Cammy, and I trusted their opinions in Call of Duty as well. I've obviously teamed with those two guys in the past as a player. So I trusted their opinions on that. And again, we were signing 10 players, so it was like, it wasn't easy to fit. It wasn't hard to fit him into those 10 players, if that makes sense. Like, he wasn't one of the first initial names we were signing, but he was definitely, like, the 6th or 7th player, like 100% locked in. So I think that, again, a lot of it has been to do with scouting over the last couple of seasons. Going into the season we signed Insight, we brought him in based on his continued success throughout the Modern Warfare season. He was already a candidate for one of our spots of the 10 players going into the first season. And to be honest, we probably should have made that move, but alas, we didn't. But things worked out for him anyway. He obviously had a very successful season with SNG, and then who knows, it might have worked out differently if the timing didn't align as it did. But we spoke a lot with Insight before the season. I think that was a big thing for us, like, going into this season 2, is really getting to know the personalities of our players and figuring out how they mesh well within the unit. Because before 10 we had, it was kind of, just kind of a broad amount of personalities, and there was a lot of issues there internally. Whereas going into the second season, we want everyone to really have that sort of chemistry from the get-go. Jamie had a great head on his shoulders from when we spoke, so it was an easy choice. And then going into this season again, I would say it was similar to Jamie's situation, where we kept eyes on Hixie from the very early days of the season. When we were back in Europe, we were actually scrimming against a lot of the EUAM teams, Hixie's team being one of them. So we got a lot of sort of first-hand experience playing against him, seeing that he was a talented player. Watched him throughout the rest of the season. He continued to improve. Spoke to him. We spoke to, honestly, like 8 players in the off season, like, kind of meetings, really getting to know the players. And Hixie was, like, not clearly above, but I'd say he was, like, quite clearly the number one, like, the most mature, like, best mindset out of any of the players. And honestly, his individual performances spoke for themselves. So it was honestly an easy decision to sign Hixie.
Is there anybody that you're currently still scouting that maybe don't know that they're being scouted, or do know but you're keeping a close eye on?
Yeah, I mean, like, we obviously don't always speak to every player that we're looking at. It might just be early doors where we're kind of like getting an eye, like, early sight on them, and after seeing a few good performances, we're wanting to keep track of them, sort of thing. So there's definitely a bunch of players out there that probably have no idea that we've been watching their VODs and, looking into their gameplay. And there's obviously others that we have spoke to as well, that will be hoping that we give them a call at some point. So yeah, I mean, we're always looking forward, and we're always looking at, like, making sure. Obviously, we've got our starting lineup at the minute. We're very happy, but you always need to have other options. You need to keep everyone hungry. You need to have the right substitute just in case anything goes wrong. I think that's key. Like, if there's any issues there, you want to have the right guy ready to slot in and help deliver the team a good result.
You mentioned always looking forward. You mentioned kind of looking at substitutes and everything, just about making sure the team has progress. Sorry. What were the actual reasons of Method getting benched?
Yeah, I mean, it was honestly Cold War. The game, we needed two sort of very different AR styles. We had Cammy, who was like shaping up to be one of the best players in the game, playing in a very aggressive style and often switching to an SMG, and we believed that Zin is a great AR player, definitely can fit in a lot of different teams in the COD League. But for us, we felt like the best chance we had of success going on to the rest of the season was bringing in Jamie, who is a lot more disciplined and it just fit in better with the team to go forward.
Let's talk about the team going forward. You had such a successful run. You won stage 2 major, and you were realistically the major threat to FaZe. Throughout the season, FaZe and Rocker and Ultra were kind of edging their way to the top, but there was a moment of which where Rocker's resurgent, if that's what you want to call it, Rocker's revenge, however it's been dubbed by multiple different people. What was the team's mentality like after that had happened and going into champs? How did you, as strategic coach, moved on to head coach, manage to change that around?
I mean, it was definitely it wasn't me that just did that. To be honest, I wouldn't say that I deserve any of the credit for that. Really, I'd say it was all the players. The players right after we lost, like before we even really needed to sort of go into it and talk about it, we're very like much focused on champs and sort of getting redemption. It was honestly fairly easy. To be honest, it wasn't much struggle. The guys straight away were very focused on making it right at champs, and we just immediately went back. Obviously, we were gutted. Like, don't get me wrong, but there was very much like a focused energy and very much like we know what we need to work on for champs. And we just had the mentality that if we win champs, then who cares about this event, sort of thing. That was like our mentality as a team going in.
It's intriguing to see that before that event that happened in stage 2, Bance was going to retire. How did you feel when you found out about that?
I mean, he spoke to me as well, private, mentioning his lack of confidence at times, and you know, as a group, we always supported him and believed that he was the right man for the job. So we just continued to make him aware of that. And obviously, we believed that he was going to be the right leader for this team. And I think that was the main thing for me, was that Ben was, to me, clearly the most viable leader to take this team to a championship winning team throughout his experience throughout the years. And obviously, he never really seen himself as that leader figure in any of the rosters he was a part of. So I think it was also a bit of time, him getting used to that was a big factor, and that obviously improved as the season went on. And I think now he's one of the best leaders in the game.
Oh, definitely. I think that becomes because he's a Call of Duty veteran. Like you say, whilst you were competing yourself, you were on teams with him, and he's still here today. If you had to kind of think about your journey, just like his, what do you miss most about competing?
I think what I miss most about competing is definitely the control you feel when I'm in game. I'm always feeling like I'm in control. I kind of focus in, and it just was a much better feeling. You're just sort of focusing on what's going on in the game. You immerse yourself in it. Whereas when you're coaching, you're like very much watching, like obviously you prepare and you're very immersed in the practice and all those things. But then when the game starts, you're very much like in the matches, you're just sort of sitting at the sidelines, just hoping that it all works out. And that's like another level of stress where you don't feel like you have as much control of what's going on for that 15-minute period of time. You hope that all the work you've done beforehand will allow you to succeed, which sometimes does happen and is a great feeling. But then other times you're like, oh, we've worked on this in practice and then we're not doing exactly as we executed, and those sort of things happen. And at that point, that's stressful, and that's obviously normal in any sport that's going to happen at different points of time. And I think over the time I've got better at sort of controlling that, but still, it's still never very easy.
Reddit wants to know, how did you know? Well, Reddit wants to know, when did you know that you had such a top tier squad in Ultra?
I think that I knew that we had a top tier squad in Ultra at the start of Cold War, to be honest. Like, I know we were not performing very well in the matches. We had top 8 at the first stage after going like 1-4 in groups. Then we went 1-4 in groups again, start of stage 2. So like it definitely wasn't a great start of the season, but like in practice and whatnot, we were like constantly competing against the top teams, performing very well. Whereas in Modern Warfare the season before that, we didn't perform very well in practice whatsoever, apart from like brief periods throughout the season. But this year, like coming into Cold War, we started performing well from the get go, and I think we weren't at our peak yet. Don't get me wrong, we weren't like towards after stage 2. That was when I say that we became like an elite level team. When we made that comeback from losing in the sort of first round of winners in stage 2 to then sort of progressing all the way through to winning the whole thing through the losers bracket. That was massive for us, and like believing that we can win. And I think other teams started to fear us at that point as well, and we were able to get a real. We went on a massive S&D win spree. Honestly, it was very easy for us to win S&Ds because we knew people were very focused on our VOD, and it allowed us to sort of always throw in something new and like continue to innovate. So honestly, it made S&D easy for us.
Talk about the period between Cold War and Modern Warfare. What was that transition period like to be just in a new, completely different game? Because obviously Toronto Ultra stayed around throughout.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously the big transition was going from 5v5 to 4v4. If it stayed 5v5, we probably would have kept our roster from the end of the season, going into the start of the game with Classic still on the roster, and then probably looked at like signing like probably another sub as well. So we probably ended up with like 7 players. We would have liked to probably still have an SMG, AR, and AR sub at that point, but we definitely would have like kept our team together. So it was a big shift when obviously it came to 4v4. Big decisions had to be made, and yeah, I feel like we made the right decisions. Zin was obviously we ended up. I think the best going into that season. And I still, like I said before, I still think he's a very good player now.
Reddit also poses a situation which I'd be intrigued to hear your response to. Would you rather Celtic miraculously winning the Champions League and you attend the final, or you win COD Champs with the squad? It's just for fun, so you don't have to feel obligated to say champs, it says.
Nah, that's I guess the actual easier one than what you think, because people are going to think that I'm going to say COD Champs with the squad, but Celtic winning the Champions League is it like the percentage chances of that happening are 0.000001, whereas the percentage chances of us winning champs are a lot higher. So in that case, I think it's an easier choice to go for the least likely one, and then hope that I still achieve the other one. Because the other one is not possible without this free like miracle happening. The miracle is the Celtic one. The other one is not a miracle.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, why not? Let's go with statistics or probability odds.
Exactly.
Reddit wants to know if you had to choose Toronto or Scotland, or even something you miss from Scotland or Toronto whilst you're in each of the different locations, what would it be? That's
a good question. I think I like both places. Obviously, Scotland's where I've brought up, so all my friends and family and whatnot are here, so that's kind of massive, Whereas Toronto, is definitely a very different lifestyle. You're out and about, sort of in a more city environment. I can walk down the street and get coffee, just walk and meet the team on a daily basis, and working from the facility, being with the players, all those things. I really enjoy that, and just the city in general is just really nice to live in. Expensive, but really nice to live in. So I'd say I love Toronto for that reason, and obviously Scotland is, it's just more. There's a lot more sort of nature, and I can take my dog to the park and all these sort of things, all the simple things, you don't really get that in Toronto. It's very much the kind of city life. So I'd say they're just very different lives, really, to be honest.
If you had to choose moving Toronto Ultra, because it is a European team, say to Glasgow and call it Glasgow Gladiators or something, I don't know. And I tried to alliterate it there. It didn't really come that well, but oh well. Yeah, would you move that team back to the UK so we could have multiple franchises representing the UK, or would you stick it down? Toronto Ultra will stay Toronto Ultra.
Toronto Ultra would definitely stay Toronto Ultra. I think we wouldn't be here without the success of and all the other staff behind the scenes. Obviously, we're on the face of it. 2 European coaches and a bunch of European players. But behind the scenes, there's a lot of great Canadian, American, even on the Mad Lions side, there's people from all over the world, to be honest. I'm naming a few nations out of many that the Toronto Ultra and Overactive Media as a whole as a company represents. So, I'd say that we wouldn't really be here without all those people. So I'd say it'd be hard to convince the whole company to move to Glasgow. Nor that I'm not sure if I would want that, to be honest. I mean, they might all be a bit scared.
Yeah, but let's talk about you as a person, on a personal level even. You must have been surprised with Overactive Media kind of bringing you in, and that must have been some place that you never expected to be. If you had to predict, where you'd be in a year's time, or what you're doing in a year's time, do you think it'll still be Call of Duty, and do you think you'll still be at Toronto Ultra?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I don't foresee myself leaving Call of Duty or Toronto anytime soon. I think that, my goal is even when I was a player, if you looked at my sort of, obviously I had a couple of different teams where if you look at my Wikipedia or whatnot, you can see there's a couple of different teams where it's short periods of time, but that was mostly never on my own decisions. I'd say that for the most part, I always wanted to build long-term successful teams and very, hesitant to make changes as well. I liked building teams and having loyalty between teammates. So there was a lot of opportunities where we took on better being a player and things like that, and done a lot of different moves that maybe might have made more sense. But I think that from a public perspective, but from us and from my own perspective, I always felt like loyalty was a big part of that. So yeah,
definitely. Let's also kind of think on the future as well. If you had to give somebody a bit of advice to help them out in the future, whether it be just life related, Call of Duty related, or even just media related, anything kind of in that area, what would it be?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I'm trying to make sure I give some good advice. I'd say that for me, what has really helped me recently is just continuing to stay active. I'd say that's key throughout COVID and throughout the current times. It might get difficult again very shortly. Obviously, if there's any more lockdowns and stuff. So I'd say try and stay active. Try and go out on walks. Try and go to the gym if you can. Try and just do something. Don't just sit in your room. I know you might feel like it. You might just want to sit in your room and just game all day. It's cold outside. Blah blah blah. But I'd say honestly, for the mental health reasons, not even the physical reasons, I'd say it's massively beneficial to make sure you get out, get some steps in. Just get out of your room, pretty much. I'd say that's key for a lot of gamers who might be watching, because I know for me when I was younger, what I would do around this time if we were locked down, say I was around 18, I would just be sitting in my room all day playing COD, and I wouldn't be doing anything else. So I'd say that's probably my advice.
Reddit also asked a very interesting question. With how successful the signing of Insight was, are you surprised that teams aren't looking at any more amateur talent? And do you think there should be an advocacy for teams to take the chance on amateur players? Would you see them as the 12th CDL spot, or do you think that has been secured by a squad already?
I think, to be honest, amateur talent is always getting picked up. I think it's the kind of there's this crazy idea, and that there's not a lot of opportunity for these amateur players. I think there's been, if you look at the players from stage 1 of the COD League to now, like a lot of the players have changed. A lot of players from the amateur scene have came in, so there's plenty of opportunities there if you make your name for yourself. Obviously, there's been a bunch of players who you could argue throughout the years probably should have been given one of those opportunities here or there. I think that's probably the biggest thing for some players is like there's not enough opportunity. That's the thing, because sometimes it just might be the head coach like myself or one of the GMs just doesn't think you're the right fit for their team, and that might be one of the only opportunities you got or something along those lines. And there obviously can be a lot of politics and stuff like that involved too. So I'd say that like it definitely is hard, and there's 100% been players throughout the years that have missed out that probably would have achieved great success at a pro level. But I would say, on the other hand, there is still great opportunity. So just do what you can to get your name out there. And I'd say the biggest advice is just, back in the day, people would just be looking at your individual talent, and now you've really got to have the right mentality. You've really got to, before you're even getting picked up by a pro team, really start to think about that, because more teams are talking to players beforehand and really getting to know them. So if you're coming across as a bit of a dick from the get-go, then you're probably going to get less opportunities. So I'd say that like all these things need to be on point nowadays. Of course, if you're an incredible talent, you're going to get gifted more opportunities than others. But on top of that, if you are a gifted talent, you need to do all the other things great, because then you can actually become like a Simp, Abizi level, Cami, all these sort of big names, because all those guys are very sort of mature. They've got winning mentalities, and that's where they're able to succeed, not just their pure individual talent.
I'm going to ask a few little short questions, and I don't even want you to think about them. So if I say to you, say for example, snipers in CWL, yes or no?
Hopefully. I'd like to, yeah, hopefully. There you go. I'll just one word answer it.
One word answer, 3 words, why not? Let's absolutely just change the format up. Okay, Jerd.
What's my thoughts on him? Jerd? I mean, Jerd's a great player. I think that he's obviously living out in America at the competing in Challenge. I think Jerd is one of those players that, again, is just kind of waiting for an opportunity. He had a very sort of unfortunate situation, went down with London. And I think it's just, again, when you're one of the older players as well, like Jerd's the same age as me, you need to really be performing at a high level in challengers to get given an opportunity again, unfortunately. Although I do think he'd be a great addition as like an SMG partnership with a kind of faster pace SMG. Jerd can play at a very fast pace and can provide that sort of support SMG role at an incredibly high level, alongside like a kind of, just I think of a player like Hydra or something like, Kleenex, like any of those aggressive, fast-paced late SMGs. I'd say he would probably work very well alongside.
CWL or CDL?
CDL.
Ooh, controversial for some people.
I love the CDL life. I'm not gonna lie. I like it. I like the way it is. I like. For me personally, I understand why other people don't. I just think I enjoy the whole process of preparing for like a very specific amount of teams, and like I feel like you can go a lot more in depth into the preparation side of things, rather than like when I first started coaching, there was like 24 teams I could potentially play on a weekend, and it was very like, fuck me, you can't prepare for all these guys. Now it's like you kind of more refined amount of teams, so I enjoy it more.
Let's throw it back to the old times. Epsilon.
I was going to say like 3 different words. I definitely can't say any of those words. Shitters.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, no, they were lucky to beat us. They were lucky to beat us, I'm telling you.
Wow. Team Prophecy or Team Infused, however you want to see it as.
I mean, Infused was great. I really liked working with Andy, who was the owner there. He was very like straight up with us. If he said we were getting something, we got it. It was very efficient. Never bullshit. I'd say I loved working with Andy. Prophecy was, I would say Prophecy was a bit of a cooler brand. So I'd say that's the 2 differences really.
TCM.
I don't even know what to say about that one. I mean, obviously I enjoyed my time there and I enjoyed working with a lot of the guys there, but it ended very sour when they didn't pay me my last couple of months' salary. But apart from that, yeah.
One of those there.
Yeah. Kind of scumbag me a little bit, but
it is what it is. But you're in the position that you are today, so oh well. Millennium.
Amazing organisation. I loved working with them. Samish, who was he was there at the point in time that I was working alongside. Obviously the two different rosters. We had one with the sort of friend team with Carnage, Melo, and Jake, and then Rated as well. When I had my first time in Millennium in AEW, and then rejoined Millennium on IW with an English team, and obviously enjoyed playing with those guys. We didn't have much success. I always felt like Millennium just, it wasn't the right colours for me, I guess. Never really done well. A lot of disappointments, to be honest. Underachieving, I'd say, when I was in that organisation. Not the organisation's fault, just the timing of something was going wrong in our team. So I'd say that they were a great organisation to be a part of. It just didn't work out whenever I was there.
Oh, it's one of those things. If you had to sum up Splice or Overactive as a whole now, after you've been there for 2 years, why not?
I'd say it's a big family. Really, everyone's very connected. I'd say more so than before. With us, sort of the first year, the office staff are very separated from we're in two separate buildings now. It's very together, and I'd say the more relationships are being built there between the sort of the players and the staff and whatnot. And I think that's great. So I'd say just being a big family and improving there is great. I'd say everyone's got this sort of main drive in all aspects of the business to improve, from sort of the performance side where I'm at, and then the kind of marketing, every other sector of the business. They're always looking to improve, and I think that everyone's got that very set, and there's a lot of great people there that motivate you to be better.
You briefly spoke about people motivating you to be better. What does currently motivate you?
A lot of different things. I'd say just desire to be the best coach of all time, the best Call of Duty team of all time, just the usual stuff. I'd say I just want to win. And then I guess sort of on the other hand, I'd say that, the likes of wanting to make something of this for, my family and whatnot, and trying to really, push myself to a different level in that regard is massively important. Just wanting to make a life out of this,
Definitely. Do you see it? Well, is there anybody you look up to?
A lot of different people. Honestly, it's really hard to pinpoint specific people. There's so many people that I take advice from and talk to on a regular basis. I honestly don't even want to name an individual name because there's so many great people, top to bottom, that the people that I talk to on a daily basis or a regular basis all know who they are, and I'm very appreciative of them.
What is one thing that happens within the COD community or within any kind of life situation that's happened to you that you completely disagree with, like misrepresentation or anything like that?
I don't know. I actually don't know. I'm trying to think. I mean, I'd say that one thing I disagree with that I would like to mention, actually, now that I think about it, is there was this sort of idea that the reason that we changed Zin for Insight was because I wanted an all-European team or anything along those lines. I think that that's definitely not my goal ever. I think that we look at players across every region. It's just so happens that this is just the way it's worked out, really. The way the roster's sort of built itself is just we've had the players we've had in each position just seem to be European, and the players that we've felt like the best move for the roster and has been European. I think so far I've pretty much I'd say we've always progressed with any roster move we've made as a team. So in my eyes, it's I can't really I'd say there's been very few decisions that I would have disagreed with or changed now looking back.